The Auburn Tigers hold on to their number one spot in this week's SEC Unfiltered Power Rankings. But how did they do in the AP? Welcome on into the Auburn Express powered by the Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for giving us a listen today. We're talking college basketball, and joining me as he does every week is my good friend Dave Shoemate from SEC Unfiltered. Dave, you guys released your power rankings. It's Monday. A lot of rankings come out today. The Auburn Tigers lost. They lost this weekend to number 6 Florida at home. Before we get into the rankings, what are your thoughts on the game from Saturday? Auburn scored 81 points and lost.
Yeah, it felt like on the plays normally the hustle, I don't want to call blue collar points. That's kind of an Alabama thing. But I feel like just the play, the rebounding, the effort plays, getting on the ball for a scramble drill. I mean, Auburn is usually that team. And again, I think you would agree with this, Mike. Auburn, I don't think is the most talented team, 1 through 9, 1 through 10, however deep the roster is in college basketball. I think Auburn's kind of, it's their DNA, the culture of, hey, they're going to be relentless at everything they do, rebounding, defense, forcing turnover. Again, it's not great this year, but traditionally that's what Auburn does. And it felt like Florida was making those plays Saturday. Bruce Pearl said it in his postgame. I think he nailed it. I think because I'm down here in St. Simon's Islands. We're here for a wedding. I was telling a guy I was watching the game with when we were getting ready for the wedding, and I was like, dude, it almost like it felt like Florida really needed this kind of game. And Bruce said in his post game, it was like, I should have probably prepared my team a little bit better on how desperate Florida was going to come in. Because, I mean, as you saw, Mike, they got embarrassed the week before against Tennessee, and Tennessee was missing 2 starters. Everyone thought, myself included, thought Tennessee was going to win that game. It felt like Florida was playing with another gear. And even it looked like at times Auburn looked a little like too loosey-goosey. And at times I think their emotions with Janai and I think Chad Baker-Mazara got the best of them at times. And I think it was just one game. I just think it was one game. Again, it's a really good Florida team. I think Florida is one of those teams that can certainly get to San Antonio, make a trip to the Final Four. I just think it's a tip of the cap to Todd Golden having his team ready. It's just, again, that's the 3rd-ranked team in the country now.
Florida. Yeah, right.
It just shows you how tough the league is. And I think, you tell me if I'm wrong too, Mike, I don't think people will be – I don't know, maybe not dropping, maybe not many people wanting to drop Auburn from the 1 spot as much if this game was in Gainesville. I think it was almost like people were a little more shocked. It's like they lost at home. Because, again, I think most people consider it the toughest place to play in the sport right now.
Yeah. It snapped a pretty impressive home winning streak for them. I did not see their first loss coming at home. I knew this was going to be a tough game for them. Florida has traditionally played them very tough. The quote that you were talking about, though, Dave, I got this quote. I was there at that press conference. He says, I don't know that I made our team understand how important this game was to Florida. If they lose this game, they're 4 games behind us in the league. Right now, they're only 2. So they just played harder. They played better. They played desperately. We did not look like the number 1 team in the country, and we lost as a result. Ultimately, a couple players had some tough games. Janai Broome kind of did what Janai Broome does.
Walking double-double.
Yeah, but Denver Jones didn't hit a shot. Like, how often is that going to happen? They missed 9 free throws in the game that they lost by 9 points. There were some things that I don't think you could consider trends necessarily at this point in the season that attributed to the loss on Saturday. But look, in the rankings, you did not think that it was enough to knock them off that number 1 perch. So we're going to unveil the rankings here. The SEC Unfiltered Power Rankings, the week of February the 10th. Auburn at number 1, Alabama at 2, Florida at 3. Wow. We're going to talk about the AP rankings in a second. Texas A&M at 4, Tennessee at 5. I got some questions for you here about A&M over Tennessee. Missouri at 6, Ole Miss at 7, State at 8, Vanderbilt at 9, Kentucky down at 10, Arkansas at 11, Texas at 12, and rounding out the bottom 4, Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU, South Carolina. Going to the middle of the pack here, A&M over Tennessee. Talk to me about this. You've got the Aggies ranked over the Volunteers.
I think A&M's just a little bit more consistent in what I'll be honest with you, I trust them a little bit more game to game than I trust Tennessee. That's why, because Tennessee's offensive ceiling to me really scares me, Mike. I mean, it does. I mean, when you have to rely, again, and I like Zakai Ziegler. I think he's one of the better defending guards we've seen in this league. But again, if Zakai Ziegler is having to go put up numbers and be your lead guard, again, give him credit. He had a hell of a game against Oklahoma Saturday. At one point, he had 21 points, and Oklahoma's entire team had 21 points. But I don't know if you can expect Zakai Ziegler to carry you. Maybe they proved me wrong in the tournament. I just don't trust this team like night in, night out offensively. Again, they're a very low-score team. At least with A&M, I know they have some bucket getters in Wade Taylor and Zurich Phelps. And again, we know it's kind of their game plan. You go watch the press conference after with Wade Taylor. He's sitting there talking like, hey, I just knew I had to get a shot off. I couldn't let it hit the back rim like my last shot. I had to give my guys down low like Henry Coleman and Pharrell Payne and them a chance to go get an offensive rebound. Because Mike, that's what – I mean, they're the number one offensive rebounding team in the country. I think they have a style. They're relentless. So I trust them just a little more. I think they're playing a little bit more under the radar. I think people kind of doubted them since that Texas blown lead. And again, I just take that as just some tough road game against a rival. You let one get away from you. Like it is what it is. Just like, again, a little different than the Auburn one. You just got to flush that one. It's how tough the league is. But I think slowly flowing under the radar, flying under the radar here is A&M. And it's not always pretty. It's kind of like you watch Kansas State football a little bit. It's like, it's not real pretty, man. They don't really go spread it out. They're just mucking it up. But, man, they're somehow making it to Arlington every other year to play for the Big 12 title game. It's just A&M kind of gets there, do what they do. It's not pretty. It's not pretty basketball all the time, but I think they have a style. They have a culture that can win with them and Buzz Williams. So I like them a little bit. I give them the nod over Tennessee right now.
Dave, we may get our dream matchup, a 1 versus 2 Auburn matchup here, not only in the SEC Unfiltered Power Rankings, but in the AP. These two teams are 1 and 2 in the country as it stands today. I don't see either losing a game before Saturday, but we'll see. Talk to me about Alabama. They were winning against Arkansas, and then that game got close at the end. Do you have concerns about the Tide before their matchup with the Auburn Tigers?
I think you take any road win as you get in this league for the most part. I mean, I think Arkansas came in playing probably their best basketball, at least of the conference season. I mean, coming off the winning at Rupp, got a win at the Moody Center on Wednesday night against Texas. They were coming in playing as well as they had been. You got up big. I mean, you were up 6 at half. You extended that lead to about 19 in the second half. You're about one more 6-0, 8-0 run, 6-2, 8-2 run to kind of probably get it away because Thero got in foul trouble. I think the thing it always stands, again, it's not if Alabama shoots well. I think that's one of the more false fallacies of college basketball. They live and die by the three. They still aren't a great three-point shooting team this year, and they still put up 85+ most nights. Yeah. I think their big issue, and I think what would scare you is they probably get potentially the second weekend, and even to go win the game, and especially a team like Auburn who's relentless on defense. It's the turnovers. They had 9 first-half turnovers. That can't happen. It got a little better in the second half, but there's just sometimes they'll go on a couple of runs where they're not even getting shots off because they're turning the basketball over. And Mark Sears, again, a little bit. I think he's one of the more consistent players in college basketball. But this year, he's been very consistent at turning the basketball over at times. He had 6-7 turnovers alone the other night. Yeah. That can't happen if they're going to go win the league. And again, they got the toughest remaining schedule in the country. So that's why I still think Auburn's going to win the league because I think. I'd be a little surprised right now if they don't split the series. Obviously, I think if Alabama wins Saturday, I think Auburn will probably win that game when they go back to Neville to end the season. But no, I just think right now Bama's at a point. Seems like NATO's every press conference. They got someone a little nicked up, not long-term injuries, but they're a little banged up, just like most teams are right now. But I think my issue with Bama, they're better defensively. They're a top 40 defensive team, which they were in the hundreds last year. But the thing that would concern me long-term for them, and it's why I don't think they'll win the regular season, is the turnovers. And that would scare me once we get into the second weekend of the tournament. I don't know if it'll hurt them the first weekend if they get a 1 seed. But if you go getting those, as you know, Mike, you're a basketball guy. If you go start turning the ball over 14, 15 times against other good teams, it's tough to overcome. So, I mean, and they've had 20-plus turnovers twice this year in a game.
Yeah, look, the Auburn Tigers stayed on their number 1 perch. There was a lot of debate about whether Duke would overtake them. Duke went and lost to Clemson. Lots of compelling stuff here. After a quick word from our sponsors, I want to talk about what the Tigers have to do for the rest of the season to maybe secure that number 1 overall seed. Guys, this episode of the Auburn Express, powered by the Rapport, is brought to you by our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code Rapport to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. So if you're watching Auburn basketball and you're stressed the hell out over Denver Jones going 0 for 4 from the field, Dave, the Rogue Shop will help keep you calm. Again, our guy Richard there, longtime sponsor of the show. We appreciate him dropping you guys a little note for every order that uses that code Rapport. Again, 15% off with code Rapport at rogueshop.com. Let's jump back into this. Dave, look, Auburn held on to their number one spot. They had an impressive non-conference schedule. As a matter of fact, I think the only team in the country I really had a better non-conference or comparable non-conference was Bama. And they made it out of that non-conference with one loss. You just logged your second loss at the season. It feels like we're at a point in the season where we pretty much know what these teams are, right? Like the last time Auburn was number one, the first time they lost, they dropped them right out of there. This time, you're over 2/3 of your way through the season, and you're just now hitting your second loss versus a now top 5 team. I still think they're the best team in the country. I do think. I mean, I disagree with you a little bit. I do think they are supremely talented. I think Janai Broome is supremely talented. I think Todd Pettiford is the top 3 most talented freshman in college basketball this year. You just maybe have a lot of guys who weren't highly rated coming out of high school, but Bruce Pearl has gone out and found those guys who had talent, maybe a little underdeveloped, but he developed them, and now you have a senior-laden team. I think for Auburn to not be a 1 seed headed into this tournament would be an extreme disappointment, and it would take a total collapse down the stretch. But I don't think you can get that number 1 overall seed without winning the regular season SEC crown this year.
Yeah, no, I think Auburn's for sure going to be a 1 seed. Now, I think we probably could get the discussion how many SEC teams get an overall 1 seed. Again, we got some matchups left between those two teams.
Yeah,
but no, for the Auburn ceiling standpoint, I just think you could maybe argue Alabama has a little bit more upside if they were both playing their best. Now, I think Auburn's got a much higher floor than Alabama because that goes back to my turnover issues. You don't really see that with Auburn. So I think usually, let's be honest, Mike, teams don't play every night at their ceiling. They don't. You may get it a couple times a year, maybe a couple of times. I think you get closer to that floor, which is why I like. If you still maybe say who would win the national championship right now, I trust Auburn because again, I think they do. Everyone in that. Aside from Saturday, everyone, even in the Duke game, there was stuff you could take away that you liked. I mean, how many teams are going into Cameron Indoor winning? Again, that was a game they lost, and I was like, I mean, what'd they get up, Mike? They got up quickly at 13-2. I mean, they came out firing. It was kind of back and forth. So you can even take good things out of that one. I just think Auburn does a really good job of everyone understanding their role to an elite level. Like, I think everybody on that team kind of understands, like, this is what I do to help us contribute to win. And I'm going to do that at the best level possible. I think they should have stayed at 1. I don't even think it's really I mean, some people may argue with it. And I think the people that I said it to you off air that wanted to draw or want them to move down is because I think they're just bored of seeing the same number 1 and want some kind of movement. I mean, again, they have 12 quad 1 wins here. I mean, the next closest team is Tennessee with 8. I'm looking at it now. I mean, come on. And they have no bad losses. Obviously, they just picked up their second one. They have a loss now to the 3rd ranked and the 4th ranked teams in the country, one of those being on the road. So, I mean, like, again, what are we talking about? I really don't even think it's a conversation. Again, maybe we have that conversation again if Alabama beats Auburn on Saturday. From an AP poll perspective, I'll say this, though. I don't think from a seeding standpoint, from an NCAA tournament seeding standpoint, you could move Alabama ahead of Auburn with a win Saturday. Auburn's resume is still better, and Auburn can still go get that win against Alabama at the last game of the regular season. If we're going just from an AP poll, and again, some of those AP guys don't even watch the games, I think you can move Alabama ahead of them in that perspective. And again, does it really matter? No. Like, it doesn't. I mean, cool. It's cool to say you got ranked number 1 again for another season. That's cool. I mean, it is. I mean, that's cool. But like, does it matter in the long term? No. So I still think – I think Auburn's a long way away from honestly moving off, like from the NCAA tournament overall number 1 seed, moving off that line. I don't know. I don't know what it would really. I mean, you have to take a collapse down the stretch.
I think you got to lose multiple in a row down the stretch. Maybe lose the series with Alabama, right? And then drop and have a bad loss, and have a bad loss in there as well too. Now you've got like 6. Like quad 1 games left in 8. So there are opportunities for bad losses in the SEC this year. But if you're Auburn, again, you got to handle business. This is a tough schedule. This was a prove-it schedule. I think they've proven it so far. They just have to continue to prove it because the committee has told us year in and year out, I don't give a damn what happens in that SEC tournament. What you are going into that tournament is what you're going to be going into the NCAA tournament. So you got to take care of business in the regular season. Dave Shoemate from SEC Unfiltered, I want to thank you for joining me today. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, guys, go give me the follow at Dave Shoemate SEC, and then give us the follow at SEC Unfiltered. Remember, guys, the road to 20,000 subscribers. We're getting, I think we're at about 19.7 or something again. The full SEC entity across the board, football, basketball, first pitch this Friday night for SEC baseball. Harrison and Chris will get you through that, man. But if you want all things SEC, hey, if you want all things Auburn, go to our guys. You know, you're listening right now for a reason. But if you want all things SEC, come to us over at the SEC Unfiltered channel.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.